Hello everyone, and thanks very much for the opportunity to present my research today on complex and comprehensive seasonality of neonatal and maternal nutrition in the plains of Nepal. And before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge all my co-authors here, also my co-investigators on the original study, the low birth weight South Asia trial, the donor of that trial, DFID, my current donor, the Leverhulme Trust, and other partners, the World Food Programme and Save the Children. So the context of this study is the plains of Nepal bordering with Bihar in India. And this is a highly seasonal environment with many seasonal stresses on pregnant women. So we have very heavy rainfall with high humidity in the monsoon season. We have very hot temperatures pre-monsoon and after the monsoon. There is a lean season when food security is a problem for many, and that precedes the rice harvest when workloads are particularly heavy. There's also heavy workload for women during the rice planting season in July and August, and also during the pulse harvest or wheat harvest in April and May. And then we have a cold stress upon women during the winter when fogs can block out the sun for days on end. So the objectives of our study were to provide a more comprehensive seasonal analysis of maternal and newborn nutrition in the plains of Nepal than has previously been available, and to assess the magnitude and significance of these seasonal patterns without attempting to assign causality between the effects. So we used cosigner analysis to describe the annual and half-yearly or semestral seasonal patterns and to test the statistical significance of these patterns. So to do this, we take the day and the year and calculate sine and cosine terms for that day of measurement. And then we use that as a covariate in a regression model with our outcome of interest. And from that, we're able to calculate the amplitude of the seasonal effect, as well as the acrophase, which gives us the timing of the peak or the trough. And you can see here we had a large sample size. So our outcomes, which we measured in early and late pregnancy, included aspects of eating behavior. So that was the dietary diversity score, the individual food group consumption, the number of eating occasions per day that the pregnant woman had, whether or not she ate down, which meant that she ate less than she would normally eat during pregnancy, whether she had food aversion, and also some aspects of morbidity, vomiting and diarrhea, and her relative thinness, her BMI and her mid-upper arm circumference. And then for the newborns, we looked at their body size within 72 hours of birth. So moving on to results, we found that for almost every outcome that we examined, we found either annual or semestral or both annual and semestral seasonality. And from these graphs, just to give you an indication of how to interpret them, when there's a small a up here, that means that the annual seasonality was significant. Where there's a small s, it means semestral seasonality was significant. Early pregnancy is on the left-hand side and late pregnancy is on the right-hand side. So if we look at, for example, the eating occasions per day, we can see that there's a trough here in November, December, whereas for the women's dietary diversity score, we see that that has is lowest in the very hot season in May, and there are two peaks in the winter and again in the monsoon. Conversely, for the women's eating behavior, we found that eating down and vomiting and food aversion all seem to peak somewhere in the pre-monsoon hot season. So these things perhaps have an association with heat stress upon the women. As far as food group intake is concerned, you can see that the general levels of consumption, the probability of consuming the different food groups, it differs by food group, but that we see the strongest seasonal effects in meat and fish, in dairy and pulses, and in green leafy vegetables. And we can see that the peaks and troughs differ by food group. So for example, here, the pulse intake is highest in late pregnancy after the pulse harvest. The dairy consumption seems to be highest in the monsoon when when production of dairy is highest, consumption of meat seems to be highest in the festival seasons, and so on. So how do all of these seasonal effects of eating and heat stress and workload transmute into the size of mothers in early and late pregnancy? Well, in early pregnancy, MUAC and BMI seem to differ somewhat, and variability was higher in the MUAC in early pregnancy. But in late pregnancy, they seem to track each other pretty well. And we found that women were thinnest around the food insecure season of September, October. And that this translated into children being born shortest. So this is length for HZ score, head circumference for HZ score here, weight for HZ score, and weight for length Z score. And you can see that for length for HZ score, children were born shortest in the winter. So this followed the period of food insecurity when women were thinnest in October, November. Children, the biggest seasonal effect was found in weight for length Z score compared to the other outcomes. Head circumference for HZ score had no seasonal association, so children's head size seems to be protected from seasonal effects. So broadly, children were born shortest and fattest in the winter, and tallest and thinnest in the summer. So just to conclude, the main takeaways from my presentation: seasonal patterns can be detected in pregnant mothers' eating behaviors, their nutritional status, and this transmits into the newborn, who is born shorter and thinner in the winter, and less thin and thinner and less short in the pre-monsoon. So many seasonally affected factors may be associated with maternal and newborn nutritional status. You'll have to read my paper to see some of the effects that we suggest there. And we want to recommend that seasonality should be taken into account in planning and implementing nutrition interventions and research. Thank you very much.